Hello, beautiful people. You're listening to the Communal Table podcast, part of Food and Wine Pro. I'm your host, Kat Kinsman, and my guest today is Samin Nosrat, host of Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat, and the author of the book of the same name. Welcome, Samin.
Oh, Kat, thanks for having me.
I knew you were going to be in the building doing a shoot that we're going to talk about in a second, but the second people found out you were in the building, everybody was like, I know she doesn't know me. Can I get a hug from her? And that's the effect that you have now, and we're going to talk about what that means in a second too. But you were here doing a shoot. You are the cover girl for a magazine. Let's talk about that. A year ago, did you know you would be the cover girl for Money magazine?
I definitely never expected this.
Oh my gosh! Let's back up. A year ago, what was your life?
So it's February now. So last February this time.
The day after Valentine's
Oh, yeah.
Day.
Last February this time I think I had just gotten home from Mexico when we shot our last episode of the show. Mm-hmm. And I was probably very tired and very behind on a deadline for my column.
Right. Because you do a lot of things.
Yeah, a lot of different things. And so I think I was probably really grateful that we were, for the most part, done shooting.
Yeah.
And it was just, making a show is no joke, sister. No joke.
Let's talk that through, because
Yeah.
I think there's so many people who, see what you do. Your show has been runaway, smash, smash, smash. And, I'm sure you've heard it from all quadrants, but you've done a new and beautiful thing in the world of food. And did you imagine that when you were doing it? Like, people see your show and they think like, oh, I want to do it. It seems so glamorous.
Yeah, and I think it seems exactly that, glamorous. Yeah. You think you want to do it because you get what? You like travel around the world and eat. It's amazing, right? But the reality is quite different.
Yeah.
And not to complain, it's just work. And so, but I will say we were in Japan for about 11 days and I feel like I didn't experience Japan at all. So I need to go back on my own. In Mexico, my joke is we were there for almost 2 weeks and, I ate at Johnny Rockets like 9 times. I love Mexican food, but it was just because the Johnny Rockets was like attached to our hotel. Mm-hmm. And we'd start our days super early and get back super late. And the only food that there was left, the only place that was open was for us to go to Johnny Rockets. Like, there was no, the street side taco cart like you imagine. And so production is really grueling and it's no joke. And I had so many beautiful little experiences throughout the grand experience, but there's just a lot of people, there are a lot of personalities, there's a lot to accomplish, there's a lot of stuff that goes wrong that you have to fix, and you're doing it all on the road in another country with people who don't necessarily speak or understand your language, or that you don't understand or speak their language, and it's just pretty complicated. So I just learned a ton. Yeah.
So let's talk about that being on the road thing. I don't travel probably nearly as much as you do, but I travel a lot and I get in very, you and I talk about mental health. I talk about mental health with a lot of people and I end up in rooms talking with people about their feelings and stuff. And at the same time, I'm away from my support system when I do that. That's a really hard thing to do. How did you stay sane?
I didn't.
Yeah. Honest answer, which is great.
I mean, we had enough breaks. That was pretty helpful. Like we weren't ever gone for many, many, many weeks. We were sort of gone for 2 weeks and would come back. And 2 or 3 weeks is about the maximum that I can be gone without like completely losing my mind.
Yeah, you being in your own bed.
I just want to be home in my own bed by the end of that. But I learned over time just little things that I could do that I grew up in a family and a culture that a lot of things were pretty, and also because my family was an immigrant family, like there was a lot of austerity in certain ways. And I would say like what is now called self-care was considered a luxury,
Yes.
And so, or even totally indulgent. So I've had a lot of like undoing psychologically to, I've done a lot of work to try to realize that the things that I might think of as indulgences are actually just necessities to keep me going because I am trying to not lose my mind.
Right. You know what? I am right there with you. I grew up Catholic school, 12 years, and in a family like my grandfather was first generation, actually, yeah, and I think my grandmother too, and you weren't kind to yourself. I remember he got my parents their first car, and they weren't allowed to have a radio in it because that's too much of an indulgence. And my dad had to sort of teach my mother, like, it's okay to want something nice, to do something nice. Can you talk about that process of not just thinking you have to work all the time, and you can?
Yeah, I mean, it's a journey because I definitely, and it's very complicated because my work is sort of just being me.
Yes,
And my
a
work
lot.
is really fun most of the time. So it can be really hard for me to draw boundaries. So that's something I think is ongoing for me to learn, and probably I'll be learning that lesson for the rest of my life. But I would say the main thing has been going to therapy therapy has taught me so much, and my therapist has really coached me, because even then, once I started to think, if I likened self-care to an indulgence, then I thought all indulgences were self-care. You know, there was a way. And so I had to start realizing, like, oh, actually self-care rarely, when it comes to, like, he would sort of forbid me from anything that was food related in self-care.
Yeah, no, that
because he was like,
that's your work.
He just was like, you need to think of other ways to take care of yourself that have nothing to do with this, whether that means going to get a foot massage, or I don't know, going for a walk, or making yourself a cup of tea, or spending time with some babies or whatever. Like, it just, and so I'm still constantly searching for those things that bring me a little bit of joy, or just creating a day-to-day life that isn't a struggle, like that everything doesn't have to be a challenge or a struggle.
Oh my gosh. Do you, like, if something becomes easy, I up the difficulty level of it.
Totally.
And that comes, through families. I think where you were taught, like my mother and her siblings weren't allowed to have summers off. They had to go to school. They had to, do all the things too. That really gets bone deep.
It's so built in. It's so built in for me that if I didn't work hard for it, I didn't earn it.
Yes.
Or it wasn't worth anything if it didn't cause me pain.
Yeah.
And I think I'm trying to unlearn that. And I've come a long way, and I still have a long way to go.
You're doing the work, and that's a tremendous thing. And how did you, and you can answer this or not, but how did you decide to go to therapy?
Oh, my best friend forced me to.
What did the conversation look like?
I mean, I looking back, I've probably been depressed ever since I was like 18 or 19. And I don't think I had the words for that, or could have recognized that on my own. And usually what I thought to myself was like, for me, the way I felt mostly was that I had like a huge stone in the pit of my stomach. And that I remember I remember being like 22 and waking up every morning, and the first thing I would do is catalog all the things I needed to worry about that day.
Yeah.
So that I could at least like get them in order. And then something about having a list made it a little bit easier to then go into the day. And then when I was probably in my late 20s, I think it was just probably my anxiety was getting really untenable. And my best friend, he was just like, he comes from a big Jewish family, and that they were like, have been going to therapy since the beginning of time, And so for him, he was like, you have to go to therapy. And I said, I don't know what you're talking about. We do yoga. I was like, we do yoga. Yeah. We are self-aware. Like, I don't need therapy. And he was like, no, it's not the same. You need to go to therapy. And I didn't know what that meant or what it looked like, or what
I'm not crazy.
It wasn't so much that. I don't know. I just felt like I'd already been doing some sort of a work.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. And so then he basically, so his partner, his boyfriend, picked up the phone and called his therapist, so his boyfriend's therapist, and like made me leave him, and handed me the phone, made me leave a message. Yeah. And then when the therapist called me back, I said, oh, I need some sort of help. I'm feeling all this kind of anxiety. And he said, oh, I probably can't take you on, but let me talk to you and see if I can recommend somebody for you.
That's a great strategy.
It was great. And so then we talked, and in the end, he was like, actually, I do think we'd be a good fit. So I started going to him. And I have what I understand to be the rare experience, which was that the first person I saw really was a good fit.
Yeah,
And that I
is
have like, that's been my therapist now for 10 years. And I am so grateful. And he's been a really important force for good in my life. But always when I'm, even just yesterday, a friend was texting me, and I've been trying to like help her get a therapist, and she said I've left messages for over a dozen people,
It's
and
so
nobody's
hard.
calling me back. And at this point, like, she's like, I really wish I could have a female therapist, but at this point I feel like that's even too much to ask. And I said, no, don't worry, like, we'll keep looking. So I sort of like sent some messages out. I'm like the Craigslist for therapy.
No, I am too. I'm like, I feel like I'm a therapy doula or something like that. Like, I mean, it's such a scary thing to make that initial thing. I've been going since I was like 14, and there really was no choice because I was so low and depressed and stopped going to school. I couldn't function. So I really didn't have the option. And it's actually a really incredibly great thing because I learned the vocabulary and the coping strategies early on. Later, when I wasn't on my parents' insurance and wasn't on, didn't have school insurance, you have to figure out how to pay for it. And that's a tough one.
Yeah, that's a scary one for me, especially because there have been, I mean, now luckily I have pretty steady and great income, so I feel good. But
You're
there
on the
were,
cover of Money magazine.
yeah, I'm on the cover of Money. I actually, when they called, I was like, "Don't you guys know I don't have that much money?" Like, but in the beginning, my therapist and I agreed on a rate, and then there were some very lean years that I had, which became this awkward thing because I was really anxious about money. And I would complain about it in therapy, or just like be talking about how freaked out I was about not being able to pay my bills. And then eventually, but to me, I knew that therapy was so important that it never occurred to me to not go or to not pay. I just was like, what else do I have to cut out of my life? And at some point, this just speaks to how great he is. He was like, it's getting really uncomfortable. Like, we need to address this. You need to I'm going to cut your rate. So he cut because he knew that I would never ask him to do that. So he didn't give me a choice, and he forced me to cut my rate. And then only once I got my next like big, when I sold my book or whatever, I can't remember what the money was that came, then did he allow me to go back up. And then once I started making more money, I was like, oh, you know what? Now I can afford to pay you even more. So please allow me to do that.
I think a lot of people don't know about sliding scale and the fact that therapy can be negotiated. Sometimes I tell restaurant people a lot, especially when I talk to restaurant owners, they want to take care of their people. I'm like, find a regular of yours who's a therapist, let them eat for free periodically, and and exchange coping sessions or something like that with people.
That's a great idea.
There's a way to do it. And I also just want to give a shout out to Crisis Text Line. It's a great 24/7 free service manned by volunteers who have been trained. I have been trained there. You go through 30 some hours of that, and you can text 741-741 any time of day or night, and somebody has a text conversation with you.
Oh,
and
wow.
gets you to a better place.
That's
and
great.
Can help you get things in there. I just wanted to give them a shout out because I think the work they do is so important. Listening to you, it sounds like a bit of self-care you do for yourself is hanging around with people who have your best interests at heart, from a friend who sends you to therapy to his boyfriend who sends you to a good therapist. Like, how did that come together for you, getting your support
Trial and
system?
error.
Right. Yeah. But like that comes together for putting together your production team for your TV show.
Yeah. I feel like everything I do in my life, I feel like I'm circling around in a spiral, getting ever closer to the same lesson over and over again, which is to surround myself with good people. And that is one of that's probably the single most important variable in my life for my happiness in my work and in my life, is to have good people around me.
Yes.
And that's not to say like we never have strife or we always agree or anything like that. It's just I'm sort of detoxifying my life.
Yeah.
And that's been a very long journey and probably will continue to be for me, I think, because there have been plenty of toxic forces, and sometimes for me, and I think like most people who sort of are in those situations, it takes a long time to recognize what is toxic.
Oh, the patterns.
And so, yeah, I'm still learning, and I probably will be learning. But I also have always thought of myself as like a collector of good people, and I always am like, meet people and they're really good at what they do, or they're really wonderful, or both, or they're just really special and generous and kind. And I'm always like, okay, like you're a person I would like to do something with. And so they kind of go into my mental file. And then later when I need to do something or want to do something, it's like, oh, I call up that person you would be so great to collaborate with. And so, and I'm just getting better at being like I'm trying to improve as a communicator and as a collaborator.
I suck at
And
communication.
so
My friends will tell you.
yeah. And so I think certainly in friendship and definitely in like work relationships has proven to be a really important thing. And so when I meet people who aren't transparent or who can't communicate, that's super frustrating for me.
And so now you've had this show that came on, and your book had already done tremendously well. It changed the face of how so many people think of cooking, how they approach cooking. I remember the first time I saw it, and I was like, this is the book of the year. Clearly, the way that you broke it down, you are a teacher deeply and fundamentally, and the way that you were able to communicate that's such a huge thing. So you already had this, success, but then you were available to a much wider audience on Netflix. And I imagine there's been a tremendous reward in that, but it also manifests in you're becoming a very public person who people probably think that they know. And can we talk about what that looks like? Because you mentioned your name to anyone, and people just go like, Samin, and and it happens, whether it's people sort of who I know, or you just like hear your name in the cosmos, and people universally have this reaction to you. How do you protect the self that you are and keep people at a healthy distance?
I'm learning. I have really bad boundaries, so it's hard. I think part of it is making sure I have good people around me to help with that, and making sure that the people who are close to me are really trusted. So that's one part of it. It's complicated because I love that people have such a warm relationship and response to me. And also, I am just a regular human who's flawed and grumpy sometimes and tired and wants to just go to the coffee shop in my pajama pants, or whatever. But like, there's now just kind of a different sort of eyes on me.
I can't even imagine like, going out to being you and going out to eat at a restaurant.
Restaurants are complicated. Yeah, restaurants are hard because it's like ground zero in a way,
Yeah, people want
and so and it's also can be so wonderful because people want to share what they're doing with me. And I always try to be really kind and generous, and so grateful for what's happening. But sometimes you just want to like have dinner with your friend. And I'm realizing that is much less possible for me now. And so I'm definitely mourning the loss of a kind of anonymity that is really I've had we all have had our whole lives, and all of a sudden I don't. And so I did just take a break. I went to the desert where like
you watched Gilmore Girls.
Yeah, I watched a lot of, and like people didn't really have Netflix there. So it was nice because people didn't really know who I was. That was kind of a beautiful breath of fresh air. But I'm just learning. I'm learning. And it's hard also because another part of it, which is complicated, is like, nobody wants to hear me complain about having my own show.
Because golly, you're the charm.
Yeah. And it's not that I'm complaining. It's just part of the reality of it. And so, I don't know. It's just, it's weird. Yeah.
Yeah. You're somebody who I want to bubble wrap and protect in a lot of ways, because I know that also you being on camera opened up a whole conversation of who gets to be on camera, who are the faces who will do this. And so much pressure must be put on you for being a woman and being from the culture you're from and stuff like. And I think a lot is placed on your shoulders. It feels like.
Yes and no. I mean, I put a lot of that on my own shoulders, and but also I don't know. And maybe this is just like my brain doesn't work in this way. I don't feel like I represent everyone. I feel like I represent myself. I feel really glad that I have offered something different than like what has historically been available. But I'm very aware that I'm just the first of hopefully many,
many.
And so, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I also don't read press. I don't read comments.
Really healthy.
Yeah, I've like very much sort of shrunken away from social media in big ways. I don't really a lot of that stuff doesn't reach me.
Yeah.
So that's a big coping mechanism. It's protecting
really
myself from that stuff. And the thing is almost all of the comments and press have been overwhelmingly positive.
I honestly have not seen a single negative thing.
But even that, it's too much. You don't want to think about yourself in the third person. I'm just one person.
Yeah.
And another thing, like this is something I think about all the time is, I'm just one person who doesn't look like who has historically come
Yeah.
before, who got an opportunity and was able to show up. And yes, like I happen to have the skills to be good on camera and, you know, be a good teacher or whatever. But again, I'm just one person. There are, I'm sure, way more skilled people at it who have not yet been found. And so I keep thinking, like, what about all of those, like, Black people, brown people, non-gender conforming people, you know, or gender non-conforming people? Like, what about all of those other people who look different, who have not yet been found, who are probably way better than me? You know, like, when do we get them? You know,
That's gonna be so. Well, first of all, like you're underplaying your
Yeah.
stuff because like you do have that ability to be a teacher in a really tremendous way, but also lead with warmth. And you know, I think there are a lot of I get weary of the cool guy TV hosts trotting around the world, and I think there's sort of a notable pause in that, and it's been a pleasure to see sort of who is getting more things and what that is going to have. So you know, I think it's opened up a really good.
I'm really excited to see what happens. Like, you know, and right after, less than a month after my show came out, like a friend of mine who's a Black chef called and said, "Oh, Netflix called me," you know, and I'm like, "That's amazing."
Oh, that's a
like,
great
you
thing.
know, like, and I'm like, "It's happening.
Yeah.
Like, this is good," you know?
I think there had
So-
there had to be a first Julia
Yeah.
Child. There had to be all of that stuff. But I mean, that's, you know, a generosity of spirit that you have that way. Let's talk about how you came to the show, because I think people who hadn't been familiar with the work you'd been doing for such a long time. Let's back up to a meal that you had at Chez Panisse
okay.
that changed your life, and we'll into how you got to here.
So I was at UC Berkeley as a writing student, as a literature student, because I wanted to be a writer. And my boyfriend
one should do that.
Don't do it. Don't do it. Basically, nobody should do anything I do. Cook or write. Like, they're all sort of like terrible jobs in
Masochistic.
their own way. Yeah.
Yes.
Find a healthy job. But I wanted to be a writer. I didn't know exactly what that could look like, or I just sort of was in this idealistic bubble.
Yeah.
And my boyfriend grew up in San Francisco, and he had always wanted to eat at Chez Panisse in Berkeley. And so we saved our money for 7 months. We saved $220. And we went to eat there, and we had this really extraordinary meal where, to me, above all, I felt cared for. I mean, it was delicious. But I had just never been in a restaurant like that, where like every detail is carefully thought through, you know, and that just felt so wonderful, and I felt so inspired. So I wrote a letter, and I asked for a job there as a busser, bussing tables, and I brought it in, and they said, "Oh, you need to bring that to the floor manager." So I brought it over to the floor manager's office, and when she opened the door, we recognized each other because she'd been my server the night of the dinner.
Oh,
and so and we
wow.
had like this very sweet interaction. And so she hired, you know, and in retrospect now, as a person who's run restaurants, I'm like, oh, she was desperate, because she hired me and she's like, "Can you start tomorrow?" So so I started bussing tables the next day, and it really was just so enchanting to work there. It feels, you know, it smells good. It looks so beautiful. Everything tastes good. It's humming. Like, I started working there on the 28th birthday, I think was my first day. And it was just, by then 28 years of that place existed, and systems were developed. Everybody knew what they were doing. A lot of the people who worked there were the first group of people who'd worked there still. So like, there was just such expertise in the place, and it was so enchanting that I begged them to teach me how to cook. And it took a lot of resilience, because at first I don't think they really wanted to, but they came around and they did. And I stayed there, and I noticed that over the days, as the menus changed, that we were always paying attention to these 4 elements, to salt, fat, acid, and heat. And that became sort of this system that I filed all of the information that I learned into. And one day I went to the chef and I said, "Oh, like, I see this pattern, salt, fat, acid, and heat." And he said, "Oh yeah, we all know that. That's how we all cook."
And who was the chef?
His name was Chris Lee. That's who really became my mentor. And so Chris was like, "We all know that, like, of course." And I said, "Why didn't anyone tell me?" And also because they had given me this huge stack of cookbooks to read and cook from at home, and it wasn't in any of those books. And I just was like, no one told me this. It's not in any of these books. I'm going to write a book about this.
Presumed knowledge that they had. I guess if that's just so baked into that place, which feels, I have never been, but I've read all the stuff about it, and it feels so pedagogical there. So I'm really surprised that didn't come
It
up.
just was not, you know, it was a kind of thinking of kind of like systemic thinking that I think hadn't occurred to anyone to like specifically articulate. And so I don't like, that's what I always say is I didn't invent anything new. I just discovered or like came up with a different way of talking about it and organizing it. And what's amazing is now all these years later, after I'm fast forwarding through a lot, but after I wrote the book, I came and I got my first galley copies. I brought a few to Chez Panisse, and the chefs were like, "This is amazing. This is going to be our textbook. Like you captured what we did, what we do here, and we're going to make everyone who works here from now on read this." So I felt like I had done them justice. So that was good.
Oh, that's such a beautiful thing. And also that moment when you get that first galley.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It's amazing. It was amazing. So, but in between, what did I do? I went to Italy and cooked. I came back and worked for Chris at his restaurant, Ecolo, where I really discovered that I was unhappy. And that was probably the height of my depression.
Yeah.
And
restaurant life is not conducive
it's
to...
brutal. And I wasn't happy, and I didn't let the people near me be very happy either.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you go back at that time, are there people who know you like as a grumpy person, as a...
Yes,
Yeah.
for sure. And I have a lot, I've done my best to like make up for the way that I acted, and I've apologized to people. I also think in my memory, it's probably worse than it was in reality.
We're all... A lot of us are self-flagellating kind of people, and they probably didn't even register.
Yeah. So, but there were just a lot of pressures on all of us there that were really, really challenging to deal with. And so when the restaurant closed, I was ready. I was like, okay, I don't want to work in restaurants anymore. I want to write. So I went back to Chez Panisse and helped out for another couple of years. But in the meantime, I was writing. And by then I had taken this incredible class with Michael Pollan, who really taught me everything about writing. And he, and through that class, I got this incredible writing community and journalistic community. And I had already this wonderful food community, but now I knew young writers and filmmakers and audio people. And so through them, I moved into this little office that we all share in Oakland. And I started treating writing as a real thing, which was very scary to do because at the time I was making like maximum $25 a blog post for yogajournal.com. Like it wasn't lucrative by any means of the word, but at least I had this other skill that I could turn into money in order to like pay my bills and eat my food and stuff. And I just went along with that for a long time. And then eventually Michael started writing a book about cooking. So he hired me to teach him how to cook. And he wrote about that in the book. It was called Cooked.
Okay. Yes.
And so I'm his cooking teacher, like character in that book. And then when his agent was reading the draft, she said, "Oh, who's this? She sounds interesting. And does she have an idea?" And Michael said, "Oh yeah, she has this idea about salt, fat, acid, and heat." So he put me in touch with her. And she is one of like the power agents in publishing.
Who is it?
Her name is Binky Urban.
I've heard that name.
Yeah.
What a great name, too.
Yeah, I mean, that's like how powerful you are is your name's Binky.
Yeah, and you can get away with that. Yeah.
Like, and so Binky, she sort of looked at what I had. She told me what I needed to do. It took me about a year to do what she wanted. And then I came back to her and she passed me on to the person who's now my agent, this wonderful, wonderful human called Kari Stewart. And Kari worked with me for a few months to sort of solidify the proposal that I'd really derived from teaching years of cooking classes. And then we sold the book in 2013.
And if you want to talk for a second, book proposals, I know that there are a lot of chefs who think like, oh, I'm going to write a cookbook. I'm going to do something. That proposal process to me was in some ways more grueling than some parts of writing my book.
I think so too. And I think, I actually got a writing residency to go to for 2 weeks to work on the proposal. And it was so brutal because it's such at least for me, I wasn't doing that much because I had to do so much thinking to organize how the book would be that I was in this residency with 2 other writers, and every day at the end of the day, they would come back and tell me like how many pages they'd written or how many words. And I was like, I wrote 3 Post-it notes. Like it's so much about organization. And what I tell everyone and what everyone told me is that it's worth it to spend the time to make a really thorough, well thought out proposal. Absolutely. Because A, it will get you a better book deal, and B, it will be this important touchstone that you can refer to when you're deep in the writing process of the book and you're lost and you don't remember why you're doing this or what you're doing or what you wanted to do in the first place.
I actually can't speak to that because my book proposal was an entirely different book, and they said, no, toss that aside and actually write this book instead. So I didn't have a proposal.
Oh, wow.
And I actually, in some ways, regret that because I've heard everybody who has, a book that they did write the proposal for say, like, you have skeleton already built to lean into.
Yes and no. I mean, also like many people who I know, their final books, and including me, my final book looked a lot different than the proposal that I had written. And I knew that would happen. And it very much did happen. So yeah, it's interesting because I've now written my second one. And so proposal, not book.
Okay. I was like, what are you telling us here, Samin? Oh,
Just
wow.
proposal, and it looks
And boom, it
and it's
landed
so different. It's so it's much more skeletal than the first one was.
Yeah.
But now I feel like I've been through it once, so so I have a little bit better idea about how to do things. So
Let's talk about the physicality of this process too, because I know that the toll it takes on your body to write a book, to I imagine do a TV show, like it's and then to be dealing with a propensity for depression or anxiety. I don't know if people who have experienced it know this, but other people don't know how physical it is. It hurts to have depression. It hurts to have anxiety, and to be mining your life for output like that.
it's
is tough.
super physical for sure. I mean, in many ways. So I in the most basic level, I find writing to be very physical, because I think for me, even when I'm just writing a story about a recipe that's somebody else's, it doesn't even have to be mine. I have to get physically in touch in my body with the way that the feeling that I want to evoke in the writing. And so that means getting really quiet, and often like everyone at my office makes so much fun of me because we all have like these little sort of like little mini offices in a row. And I have so much bedding in mine. I have like pillows and
Do you have
sheepskins.
pajamas?
I don't have pajamas, but I have cozy slippers.
Oh.
I have a hot water bottle. Like, because a lot of the time I have to sort of turn off the lights and lay on the ground.
Yeah.
And sort of go to this weird like nap/meditation place until I can zero in on what it is that I'm trying to say. And only once I like can feel that feeling, then I can write toward it. And it took me a really long time to realize that that was what I needed to do, and that there wasn't shame in that. Even because a lot of the other people in my office are like incredible writers and reporters for every national publication and best-selling authors, and they appear to write like just
Oh my God, I can't.
So like we all have different processes. Plus, for me, I'm an immigrant kid. I'm a natural overworker. I want to please other people, and then I was a cook, and all of those things force you to be sort of, or push you to be somebody who defines yourself by how hard you work and how long you work and all of that. And so
The emotional accountant.
totally. So for me, like after all of those years of cooking, if I didn't work, stand on my feet and feel exhausted for 14 hours, then I felt like I hadn't put in a day's work.
Yeah.
But a day of writing can look very different and feel very different. So I still have some guilt, but in the beginning I used to have a ton of guilt when I would go to work and sit at a desk and sort of like mess around for a little while or take a nap or whatever, maybe write a page or two, and then, or maybe not write a page or two, and then go home and continue feeling guilty. And so because what was that? How could that possibly be quote unquote work when that didn't look anything like what I had known work to be throughout my whole career?
Yes.
And now I've just learned like, well, my writing process is my writing process. And I am a procrastinator. I can speed things up. And now that I have like a column that has a regular deadline, I'm a lot better at that. But I think I've had to learn to be a lot nicer to myself.
Yeah. So what does that then look like so you come out of it, or maybe you're in a better state now that you're in cozy mode, but like after a day of shooting where you have to be on, you have to be present to watch your show, is to see you connect with people in a very deep and fundamental way. You're going all day, you're tasting things. Then production wraps for the day, you go back to your hotel room. What does that look like for you?
I mean, often it looks like paying attention to all the stuff I ignored for the last 18 hours.
Yeah.
So like a lot of emails and because of the schedule of making that show, it was really hard because we had staggered episodes. So while I would, I would finish a very long day in Mexico and then go back to the hotel room, and then I would need to record a voiceover or like write script or something. So there's usually some more work. And then, but also because I have to not get sick and be able to do it the next day, I did my best to prioritize sleeping, but also I have curly hair.
Oh,
so that takes a lot of like, you have to wash your hair in this really particular way at night and dry, and it takes forever. And then I would have to wake up early and put on makeup. It was just, time is like a whirlwind when I'm in production, but usually any chance I have to be by myself, being by myself is a really, really, really important part of my life, which I didn't really put words to until the last several years. I always have been an ENFP on the Myers-Briggs.
Oh my
I'm
God,
like,
me too.
yeah. I'm like deeply extroverted in a lot of ways, but also I need to spend a lot of time by myself.
We are ambiverts.
Yes.
That's the word for it.
Yeah. And so, I mean, and like I do derive energy from being around other people, but if I don't have already like some baseline of my own energy, then I can't do it. So, you know, I really am a big fan of headphones. Like I
Yes.
think headphones when I'm in the van or whatever with the guys, like I was just all about like, how do I tune out? Or anytime I could just close my eyes and tune out for any amount of time. Even sometimes it was just between takes. Like if I'm, you know, and I had to learn how to like moderate my energy so I wasn't always on, just like for 7 hours straight, so that I could, you know, because it takes a ton of energy. And you know, what people don't see is that you have to do everything 15 times. So everything that you saw, I mean, it was genuine. It was me being as like alive and vibrant and connecting with people. But I had to do that a lot of times. We had to do that a lot of times, every time at the same level.
Keeping that energy is
Yeah,
so...
and that just takes a lot. It takes a lot. So, you know, and I do my best to eat a lot of vegetables. I do, but sometimes it's just not possible based on like where you're traveling or what you're doing. So, usually that means giving myself, like being kind enough to let myself take time off when I come home. And because my nature is like, don't take any time off. You're already so behind on everything else, you know?
Yeah, I mean, there's if you've ever been broke, there is a little hole that never heals. And you know, and I have this conversation sometimes with my husband, who's never been like really broke at any point, and I know when something I feel like slightly threatens my career, anything I'm doing, I go right into austerity mode.
Yeah, totally. And I'm always fighting that because I was born into like a family of immigrants, you know, and like, how do we live on as little as possible?
Yeah.
And it's not like I want to live large all the time, but I feel like I'm trying to break that habit of just like constant scarcity, you know, mindset. And the funny thing is like, and the funny thing is I have very little scarcity mindset when it comes to other people. Like I only want to be generous with other people. I only want to share everything I have, all that kind of stuff. And I never want to see other people do it to themselves.
Right.
But for whatever reason, it's just my MO for myself. I'm like the squeezing. I mean, also I kind of like it. I'm like squeezing the toothpaste out.
Oh,
you know,
absolutely. Like the hotel shampoos.
I'm like using everything up. It gives me so much joy.
Yes, getting that last little bit out of like the toothpaste, the whatever. But yeah, there's something in there where you like go into that mindset. What was the first time that you had in your life where you felt like some sort of security around finances?
Oh, I mean, I think I'm just getting there now, and like a miracle has happened. A miracle. Can I tell you my miracle?
Please tell me your miracle.
Okay, which is that I am like, I never thought this would happen, but I'm buying a house.
Girl,
Yeah.
oh my God, congratulations.
Thank you.
Huge.
I'm so excited.
I'm so
and
proud
it's
of
like
you.
also just the most special house. And it happened super out of the blue. I didn't think it was going to ever be possible for me. And
I'm starting to tear,
and everybody who I've told and who I've like, I had to pool resources and figure out how to do it and all this stuff. Every single person has been like, this is amazing. You deserve this. This is the best thing. You earn this. And the only person who feels like I don't deserve this is me.
Yep.
And but the thing I'm realizing is like the thing that's making it a little bit easier is when I look at the money and all the money that's going in and all that kind of stuff, I'm like, oh, I actually did earn this. Like this money is book money.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like I did the work that made this money and I'm buying a house with it and there's no shame in that.
Yeah.
And so I'm really excited.
I'm so excited for it.
Thank you.
What's the kitchen like?
It's actually, you know, it's very beautiful, but it's very little. It's not that big. But there is a really, really nice stove and there's a dishwasher. I've never had a dishwasher and there's so much natural light.
Oh my God.
So
is there yard or
there's a big, beautiful garden with like, that's shared with 3 other homes. And there's, a ton of fruit trees, you know, like decades old fruit trees. And I was like, you guys, can we build an outdoor kitchen? And they said, we've been wanting to. So I want to build a pizza oven.
I can't even
And,
imagine
like,
how excited your neighbors must be that you're going to be their neighbor.
And so it's awesome. It's cool. I've been friends with this whole little group of people for a long time. So it's nice. Like it's like a little magical community I get to move into.
This is a projection because I want this for you and you may not want it. Can you get a dog?
I want to get a dog and I'm going to get a dog.
Gonna get a dog?
Yeah. I'm so excited.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk self-care and animals.
Oh
is
my
such an
God, the
important
best.
thing. I have a dog named Penelope. I have a couple dogs, but Penelope has this like loose, soft belly that is like her. I was like cuddled in bed with her this morning. She isn't usually in the bed. My husband like let her into the bed when I was sort of still asleep, and touching her belly is like Prozac.
Oh my God, I'm so excited. I'm so excited.
Oh my gosh. This is a random question just came to me. What do you think of yourself as? Are you an author, a teacher, a host? Does it matter what people
I
call
think
you?
I'm just me. You know, for
Yeah.
so many years, I was so proud to immediately identify myself as a cook. And I still am proud to
You
be
are a cook at,
Yeah.
to the core.
And so that was kind of that was the answer when people asked what I did. I said, I'm a cook. And then at some point I started saying, oh, I write. But then the questions are like, well, what do you write about? Where do you write? Where can I read your stuff? And for a lot of years, there wasn't a place where you could read the stuff. So it was a journey to get myself to feel like I could own being, calling myself a writer.
That's a hard
which
one.
is a really hard one. And then, and now I don't know. I mean, what do people? I don't even know what I don't even know.
I think you get to be Samin. And
Yeah.
that's,
I mean, it's the easiest.
oh my God. Talk to me about this. This is something I actually talked about in an interview, like at some point, like with when Amanda Mull was doing that thing about procrastinating. And I don't remember if you came up or not, but Allison Roman came up in that. Let's talk about everybody cooking. This is such a powerful thing. So many people are cooking the same thing at the same time
love
as you
that.
made them. Let's talk about sourdough.
Oh yeah.
Or sorry, focaccia.
Yeah, the
Let's
focaccia.
Yeah. What does that feel like that you made the country cook together?
That I will say I didn't have there was nothing I could really expect from the show because I just didn't know, and no one could really tell me, oh, this many people will watch it or anything, and who knew if they would like it. So I didn't really go into it with any expectations, but I did go into it with the very clear idea and goal of getting people to cook. And I wanted, which was why I worked really hard to put up a website with all the recipes so that people could follow. Because unlike a lot of the other shows on Netflix that are really beautiful food shows, you, at the end of those, don't feel like you want to go cook. Whereas I wanted the feeling here to be like, I want to make that thing.
Oh, yeah.
And so I wanted to make it as possible for people as easy as for people as possible, and to see even still, like every time I check Instagram, there's just like focaccia after focaccia after focaccia.
Nuts. Oh my God.
It's bananas. It's amazing, and I can't really wrap my mind around it. I'm so proud. That's maybe one of the things I'm the most proud of.
I mean, you should, because I'd been thinking about it with Alison Roman when I was hearing this interview about the cookies. Like, I mean, it's these national moments that now can be food moments. Because like, I feel like we lived in a time when everybody saw, maybe I'm dating myself, who shot JR or something, like these national moments,
Right.
often based in tragedy.
Right.
But these national moments when everybody came together and did the same thing.
Or bought some. Beanie Babies is one I think of, like, right? And so how beautiful that it's making something. You know?
Yes, and it's funny when anybody says focaccia now, it's like it's associated with you. That is a legacy.
That's so crazy. I didn't really realize that it's to that point.
It really is, because I found it. Somebody was talking about that recently, and then somebody was like, "Oh, that is the Samin factor."
Wow.
And so that is, I can't even imagine.
Unbelievable.
It's going to be a thing then that people pass down too, and people are gonna be like, "Why have we always made focaccia?" Like, oh, it was because of like this
That's
particular
so
thing.
cool.
I think that is the thing. So let's talk about, because you are a teacher and you want people to know things. What is the legacy you want from this? From everything, sort of the totality of
Wow.
what you do when people have, it's however we're all gone from this earth.
I don't know yet. I haven't. I don't know. I can't speak to. I don't know that I've
I'm not
spent
gone
enough
from this
time
earth,
in
but
terms
let's-
of a legacy. But I will say, like, the thing that I hope to, like, the biggest sort of mark I hope to make, maybe is another way of looking at the same question, is affecting change. And getting people to change their thinking, whether it's I can't cook. And so maybe I'm changing your thinking, or I don't know how to make something taste good, or it's I never knew that a person on TV could look like that, or I didn't think that there was room for me, at that table. And it's funny because I am a cook. I love food. I love cooking, but I feel like there's more in my heart that's so much bigger,
Yeah.
And again, like, I'm really grateful that I got the opportunity to make this series. And I always thought that book could be a series, and I saw it always in my mind's eye. So I can't believe that it happened, and that it happened in this wonderful way. But my life dream was never to be on camera. Like, that's not my end game. But if I can use what I get from this and the platform that I get from this to affect the thing that I really want, which is to open the world up for so many more people, then I'm going to do that. And so if being on camera again is then going to get me the kind of reputation that then gets me the kind of power and money to then make the kinds of choices, that I can do to create change in this industry, then I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
Like, I have a large picture view of it all, and I feel really lucky that I'm meeting people who want to work with me on that.
Yeah.
And I'm super excited. I feel really lucky.
Well, that is such a great attitude to approach that with, like, the gratitude. You've also just talked about all these things you want to do for other people. What's the thing you want for yourself?
Ooh.
Flip it. Like,
Interesting.
what's the thing you want that we can say out into the universe right now that get this thing for Samin, or that you can see, like, this thing that you want in the future?
Wow. The thing I really would love. I mean, I'm actually afraid to say this out loud.
Yeah, it's all right. Well, it's like Oprah and the secret, and you have to say it. I've been trying to say out loud more, like, what are the things I want. And I was like, I wanted to have Robert Smith on my cooking show. Like,
Oh, that's awesome.
So I put that in the universe. What is the thing?
Okay.
I know it's hard.
I know.
It's so hard.
You know what I want is I want a boyfriend. Like, I want a partner who's going to come take care of me.
Yes.
And who'd be so nice to me and is smart and challenging and funny and kind and wonderful.
A friend a few years ago, we stood up at a party and said we want to get him an apartment in New York, a job, and a husband. And you just and various of those things have happened. You have to say it.
Yeah, totally.
So everyone listening, I want this for you. I want beautiful. You deserve to be taken care of in a really lovely and fundamental way. Maybe Oprah will hear.
Yeah, maybe Oprah will call me a boyfriend
and hook it up. What would you tell yourself if go back to rewind to the beginning of the process with both the book and the TV show? What do you wish you'd known?
Wow. I think I wished I had known I would get to the end and survive.
Oh, man.
I think because there were a lot of times I didn't think that would happen. Like, I just thought that, certainly with the book, I thought it was going to kill me. Like, it just was so brutal. And so also,
that is.
I mean, for mine dragged on for so long. It just took so many years of work and research and stuff.
How long was the process from beginning to end?
Well, I count the beginning as when I started, like, coming up with the idea and making the proposal. So that was like 2011-ish. We sold it in 2013, and then the book came out in 2017. So it was a lot of years. And it was and in those intervening years, like, I had many good friends write not one book but two. I had a lot of people I knew, kept saying, like, when's this book? So where's this book? When's this book coming out?
The worst question. Never ask an author, how's the book coming?
Yeah.
It's a terrible question.
It's terrible, terrible, terrible. So I had a lot of pressure I felt from the outside and from the inside. And it was really hard to believe that I could make the thing that I saw in my mind's eye. But we did. And I will say, in terms of the book, I owe so much to my illustrator, to the woman who illustrated Wendy McNaughton. I always call her my illustrator. She's not. She's an illustrator who illustrated my book.
Yeah. She's so ridiculously talented.
She's so wonderful. And she was a really, like, having a partner in it was really important for me. And she supported me in so many amazing ways when it looked really like it wasn't going to happen. And it just felt very impossible and embarrassing for a really long time. Yeah.
And look at it now.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was looking at all those year-end bestseller lists, and there it was. And at the big places and at the indie bookstores.
Yeah, which was awesome.
That's you see, like, a Kitchen Arts and Letters kind of thing. And
I love that.
Beautiful
I
thing.
love the little guys so much. I mean,
And then the TV show, what do you wish you'd known at the beginning of that?
I think also, you know what I wish I had known was that I could have and should have spoken up a lot more to advocate for myself. And I know that now, and I know I've learned so much about the idea that like I might not have the title in a field, that gives me the qualifications to do something. I'd never made TV before. I wasn't technically a producer, and people told me, "Oh, you're not a producer, like leave it to us." And so I did. I ceded a lot of power, and even though I had a lot of ideas about how things should be done and how I wanted things to be done. And I think if I had just believed that I understood, I might not have been a producer, but guess what? Being a cook, if anyone who's worked in a restaurant knows production. You know it by a different name, but it's being organized, it's being efficient, it's working, in a team, making sure that like you're only as strong as your slowest or weakest person. All of those things, it's the kinds of work and thought and organization that it takes to put on an event, which I had done many, many times, really ambitious events, sometimes international. That's the same as producing an international show. And so I knew a lot, even though I didn't know that I knew a lot. And I just wish that I had the courage to speak up a little bit more because I think things could have been a lot easier if I had said my piece earlier on in the process rather than coming back at the end and being like, well, I wish we had done this. I wish we had done this. Can we change this and this and this?
For next time.
Yeah,
there's
totally.
There's going to be a next time.
There's going to be something else. I don't know what it will look like. I don't know if it's more of the same show or a different show. But I did enjoy it, and like I enjoyed it, and it's hard, but I like hard work.
And I
also like what's the most sort of the biggest honor of it all is that like you get to reach so many people.
Yeah.
And so the idea that I have the capacity to do that, like what am I going to do with that? That's an amazing gift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to steal something from, I'm obsessed with Jonathan Van Ness's podcast. I'm going to
Me too. I love him.
Oh my God. You should be on it.
I should be on it. Jonathan Van Ness.
Jonathan Van Ness, please. I bet he would be a heartbeat. Oh my gosh. I actually heard you talked about on Pop Culture Happy Hour.
Oh, awesome. I love pop culture. I love that.
Linda Holmes shouted you out as
that's
the thing
so
that made
awesome.
her happy that week.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
I think I heard that one. Yeah.
That is my favorite thing. But he always asks, like, it's yoga class, like, you're wrapping up. Is there a shoulder stand what do you wish I had asked you that we want to talk about?
I mean, just because you're you and I'm me.
Yeah.
Can we just have one moment to discuss
do it.
antidepressants?
Yes, let us do that. So if you want me to talk, so I had a bad spiral last summer, especially after the death of Anthony Bourdain, when I was spending a lot of time on the road, talking to a lot of other people about what they were going through and not taking care of myself and away from my my support system. My therapist was on vacation and all this stuff, and I spiraled. I had a month-long panic attack.
Ugh.
It was awful.
I can't imagine.
And like being in hotel rooms, like away from that, like stuff got dark. It got really, and I reached out to a few people, and I will especially shout out. I reached out to Andrew Zimmern and Hugh Atchison, who were there with a safety net, like basically emotional safety net, and I will always be grateful to them for that. And I got back home, and I couldn't calm my body down, and because of the writing of actually a Food and Wine colleague of mine, Maria Yagoda, she had written about ADHD and what that looks like in women as opposed to like young boys who you think of with that. And I went to a doctor, and we sort of opened up the conversation because so much anxiety is based in ADHD. He prescribed me Vyvanse. Within 40 minutes of taking the first one, my brain felt better than it had in recent memory, probably in the last decade. I hadn't been on meds for 11 years because so I had been on one that almost killed me going off.
Wow.
So Vyvanse it gave me my brain back.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes me so happy. That's so awesome.
Yeah, and it's been a really great thing, except when my pharmacy has been weird about filling it because they treat you sometimes like a junkie when you're, because it's the thing.
Right. Oh, right.
Yeah, the
Okay.
thing is, if you don't have a brain where this is going on, it just speeds you. But
Yeah.
because it just sunk right into all those jumpy bits of my brain, so yeah, and you've gone on a journey with this too.
Yeah, I mean, I luckily, I mean, I more just had resistance to taking
get
medicine
it.
at all
Took me
because I
11
thought
years.
that it would change me and I wouldn't be sensitive and creative anymore. Is really what I was worried about because I thought that like the pain was an important part and the emotion,
Yeah,
you know,
I
like
get
the
that.
feelings was a really important part of
Look at
who
my
I was.
thumb that I
Oh,
pick.
yeah.
Just showed her my gross thumb that I pick.
And so, but it took a friend who, it was actually my friend Tamar Adler.
She's
Who's
she's
so
so
awesome.
wonderful.
And she came to visit. And so she hadn't seen me in a while. And so when she saw me, she was like, oh, you're depressed and you have to take the medicine.
Yeah.
Because my therapist was kind of suggesting it, but not like demanding it, you know? And then there were other people who had suggested it. And I always was like, no. I just have to work harder. I have to try harder.
Yeah.
And so she was like, no, it's nothing that you can do. Like, you just need to take this medicine.
Your brain isn't going to make those
Yeah.
chemicals for you.
And so it still took me a bit, but she was actually still there when I got the prescription. And then I had the bottle and I was like, oh, what do I do?
Yeah.
And she said, come with me. And so we went to lunch at Chez Panisse. I mean, it's pretty funny, but we went to lunch at Chez Panisse and she was like, watched me take the first one. And then my doctor made the really wise recommendation. He told me, don't read the side effects.
Yes.
Do not Google the side effects, because if I had Googled the side effects, he was like, you'll start thinking that you're having them all.
That's such smart advice.
Yeah.
The other thing I did, and I hope she's okay about me talking about this. If not, I will check with her and we will cut this out. I asked Helen Rosner, and she texted me throughout the whole process, and and I let her know how I was doing throughout it, and she was a rock.
That's
for me
awesome.
during it. To have somebody to go through this with was really, really huge. I really haven't had any side things.
Me
It's
neither.
been really, so I don't know if this is airing before or after the podcast with Billy Durney, but he talked about the process of taking them, and he explained it to a resistant friend as it's vitamins for your brain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really is. I mean, within a week, I felt that like that rock that had been in my belly since I was a teenager was gone, which was the first time in my life that, yeah, it was amazing. And of course, there's been ups and downs. Of course, I still have my feelings.
Yeah.
But there's just a kind of a weight that I don't have to carry every day because of it. So I'm really grateful.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought this up.
Yeah.
So I have 5 questions
Okay.
that I ask everybody, and I think they're pretty fun. Let's see. First one is probably easy. What's your comfort food?
Rice.
Any form?
I mean, rice in any form. I love jasmine rice in the rice cooker, but I'm Persian, so I love Persian rice. I love risotto. Really any kind of rice. Yeah.
So we're looking for a boyfriend who can cook rice for you.
Sounds good.
Oh
yeah.
my gosh, I love that. I love that so much. What's the last meal that you had that made you emotional?
This is a good one. So I just had to do an elimination diet.
Oh, same.
And then the day after I came off, I was in the desert where there was like no bread. I had like no anything. And then all I really wanted was bread and butter. So I asked my friend Vinny, who's the manager of Tartine, like in Tartine Manufactory in San Francisco, to FedEx me a loaf of bread in the desert. So he sent me a loaf of bread and I had like Kerrygold butter. And I like sat there in the sunlight and it was so special. And I felt really loved because my friend had done this kind of extraordinary thing. And so, yeah, it was really good.
Also, yet again, Samin is good at having the right people in her life. So that's
Totally.
a good act of self-care. What is the last meal that somebody cooked for you in their home?
Okay, where are we? I'm in New York. Oh, on 2 nights ago, the day I got here to New York, I was staying with my friend. I'm staying with these friends I always stay with in Brooklyn. And so we had roast chicken with like garlic that was like pounded into a paste and stuffed under the skin. That was really tasty, and a whole bunch of roasted vegetables and green salad, and then we had chocolate for dessert. It was so good.
That's so lovely.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so beautiful. It's funny because like I think you run with a very nurturing crowd. I ask so many cooks and chefs that question. They're like, nobody cooks for me. And I'm like, oh my God, I want better things for them. This question, this is also using the secret because I want you to say this so it will happen. What living musician do you want to cook for, and what would you cook for them?
Ooh, Beyonce.
What would you cook for Beyonce?
Whatever she wants.
Oh, but like, what is the dish of your heart? Kelly Fields got to cook for Beyonce at her
Oh my
restaurant,
God.
and she said she actually came up to her with a skillet full of cornbread and accidentally bowed and like genuflected to Beyonce with cornbread. I'm like, that's what you do.
I mean, probably I know that I'm like, I'll make whatever. I'm like, I've lost my words even, but
No.
probably roast vegetables with some delicious, like just some sort of a delicious like sauce.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like a beautiful vegetable salad with herbs and yeah.
Oh my gosh! So we have a whole crew of like John Van Ness and Oprah and like all
Totally.
these, and Beyonce. And the last one, you have 5 uninterrupted minutes for self-care. What do you do?
Probably. Well, this is a really waste of water, but probably take a bath. Yeah.
They're the best.
Yeah.
They're the best. So what is it? Do you have a bath ritual?
I like very, very hot baths. I do love an Epsom salt situation. And then I usually bring either like some sort of a screen so I can watch TV or listen to music or a podcast.
Oh my gosh, like Gilmore Girls and Beyonce.
Yeah, basically.
Oh my God, Samin, I'm so grateful for your time.
Oh,
and
thank you
being
for having me.
Yes, thank you so much today to our guest, Samin Nosrat. You can find her book, Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat, everywhere books are sold. Independent bookstores are really great. You can watch her show on Netflix, and she is on Instagram and Twitter at Ciao Samin, Ciao spelled like CIAO. And you can find links to everything in the episode description. Thank you to our producers, Jennifer Martnick, Alicia Cabral, and Amy Frank. Thank you to Douglas Wagner for our delightful theme song. If you like what you heard, please tell a friend, write a review, or rate us however they rate on the podcast platform you're listening to. If there's something you'd like us to talk about or a guest you'd like to hear from, please let us know. You can find me on Twitter at @kittenwithawhip. Find out more about the show and catch up on all the episodes of Communal Table at foodandwine.com and Food and Wine's YouTube page. Thanks for listening and take good care of yourself till the next time.
Yay.